Shalom, shalom. My apologies because last week I was not around to put out a video on Parshat Shemot, which made me very sad because really the story in the book, the Sefer of Shemot, the Exodus, is the story of our nation, the story of the Jewish nation throughout the ages. We're told it begins with the 12 tribes who went down to Egypt, and then it goes into the fact that they grew large and numerous. Paro was afraid that they would becoming too powerful, and so he started to persecute, enslave, and give them more and more difficult work until one day God heard their cries, crying out to God about the difficulty. The time for enslavement was over. God chose Moshe to be the one to take them out of Egypt, to redeem them, to go to Paro and to tell him, let my people go. And Moshe did not want to take on this task. He tried tirelessly arguing with God that he cannot do it. He's not a man of words, yada, yada. God would not have it, insisted that he go, but he agreed in the end that if it's difficult for you, Moshe, and you don't feel like you can speak, your brother Aaron will be your mouthpiece. Take him with you, go to Paro. Let's get this party started, get the people out of there. And I have really large sympathy. I feel for Moshe. I cannot even begin to imagine what this task meant for a human being, for somebody who was really a fugitive refugee, ran away after killing somebody, who was away from Egypt for, I don't know, what, 60 years plus. And he had to go back to a place to go to the Pharaoh, the who was like a god in this empire that was the largest, most impressive place on earth at the time, and to tell him to let the slave nation go because a god who Paro himself said, I don't know this God Hashem, I don't know who he is. And to tell him that the God that Paro does not recognize is telling him to let the slave nation go. What are the chances of success there? I mean, okay, God said to do it. Yes, but can you imagine the fear of confronting Paro and going to a nation that you've been estranged from really his whole entire life, not just the 60 years he was gone, but even growing up in the house of Paro, he probably was thinking they probably don't even recognize me as one of their own. I'm going to tell them I'm taking them out. I'm going to tell Paro doesn't acknowledge God. I mean, where's his strength going to come from? And I can understand fear, that fear he must have had before he went. And I don't envy him in that position. But yet, he's given a task, much like the Jewish nation is given a task. We are told that all of the Torah is Ma'aseh Avot Siman Labanim. These are stories in the Torah that didn't just take place once in history. They're things that reoccur over and over again. And for us to understand how to deal, what to do, where to get our strength from, we have to really learn it in depth and know so that the next time a situation comes, hopefully we can get through it with strength and with better tools. And I have to tell you, I was away. I said I couldn't make the video because I was in Rome, and what I learned in Rome really was an eye opener experientially, for these Parshio, and they hit me in the heart a whole different way, because when I was in Rome and I went to see not just the Arch of Titus, which we all know that image where we see where the Romans had taken all the kalim, specifically the menorahs, and implanted in my brain forever. You see them holding it and taking it captive, taking it out of our holy land into their pagan country, taking all of our wealth, all of our money, all of our, taking, I think, 500,000 Jewish slaves to go there and to build up their country. I mean, when I was looking at the the remnants of the Colosseum, and I was trying to just grasp, you know, bring myself back in time, what they must have gone through and experienced. And it's the same story, really. It's the same story as Egypt. Rome was this incredible empire. I mean, the things that I saw blew my mind. It really, you can't even begin to imagine. Anyone who's seen it, seen it. You haven't seen it, you can't imagine um, what what went on there, and what they built. And that I'm sure they thought that they would endure forever, this power, just like Paro, who was laughing like, who is this god? Look at me, I'm Paro of Egypt. Like, there is no higher power. And that's what they thought in Roman and all the other empires from Paro till now. It was hard for them to imagine, with all that money and power, that there would ever be anything else. But you know what? Our nation, who has been throughout all of these exiles, who were a part of these societies, who helped build these societies, who helped build these monumental structures, who were then always persecuted or um, thrown out or suffered, as we've seen all of these empires one by one fall. And we endure to see it all. And I think when we look into this Parshat Vaera and we see that when Moshe went to Paro, and of course Paro wouldn't let him go, and we have all the plagues, we get up to the seventh plague by the end of the Parsha. And it says there that he says, because we know that you want all these plagues to go so you keep, coming to us to end these plagues, but you don't really fear God. You don't really believe in God. And God said, you know what? I could have wiped you out with some sort of a plague or any other thing I wanted to wipe you out, but I didn't. I left you here so that you should see. You should see who's in control, that it is God, the one and only true powerful God, um, not these crazy empires that you built, that I gave you the strength and the ability to do. That once you have all of that strength and all of that power, okay, you want to build a big, beautiful, impressive empire, do that, but use your power for good, not to beat down people, make them slaves and downtrodden for your own glory, and that's the end point. And that's why they all fail, because at the end of the day, they all just wanted to shine and have the glory of um, things that they thought would exist forever, so their name would exist forever, trying to attain some of that godliness. But nobody can do that. It is only God that exists forever, and that's what God was trying to say. And that's what he sends his people, the Jewish nation, to to testify to that. And that when we're in places and we're helping them build, that we should be a positive influence to the people, that if they're, if places are going to be big and grand, that it should be place of tzedek and mishpah, should be places that have ethics and morals and values. And then, because it's godly, because that is godly, it will endure forever. And they don't. And so they all tumble one after the other. Um, and that was going on in Egypt. And Moshe says, when he says we will pray for the hail to stop, he says, and it'll stop. And you should know that it is God who controls also the earth. They knew that something was going on, that God was making the hail come down, but that the God was controlling the things on earth. This is God who interacts with the earth, that they couldn't believe. They couldn't believe. That is something that was novel. The Jewish people who believe that God interacts with us on earth. I don't think they had a problem understanding that there was a God. They believed in many gods, but an active, interactive God, that they didn't believe. And that is something that we have to, not only, believe it and interact and be emissaries of God, but we have to exude that. That has to be something that's obvious and get that lesson out. Because that's how the world becomes blessed when we allow. It's God's world, but He gave us this earth, and He lets us decide whether we're going to let God in or not. And we have to do that. And when that doesn't happen, and when people get carried away, and then they think they're somehow going to endure forever without these godly acts, meaning being good, ethical, moral people, it's not. It's going to be destroyed in the end by God who rules the world. And that's something that I really felt. I felt it on such a personal level, not just reading it from the Torah, but when you visually see all these things, and it's hard to believe that they ever existed or that they were ever even destroyed. How power and countries and empires like that um, can come down. They do seem like they're going to last forever. But not when you know, not when you know that there's a God and that if things aren't run his way, he has the end word. Anyways, with all that, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. Livarach. Till next week.